The great hall of the Moon Court had seen wars declared, kings crowned, and traitors sentenced to death. But never had it seen a trial like this. Hundreds of wolves filled the chamber, their voices echoing beneath the towering stone arches. Silver torches burned along the walls, casting flickering light across armor, claws, and glowing wolf eyes. At the center of the hall stood a single girl. Barefoot, unarmed, and completely alone. Her name was Elena Hart. 19 years old. And according to every law of the Blood Moon Kingdom, she should not exist. In this world, every member of the wolf packs awakened their wolf spirit at the age of 16. It was the moment the beast inside them answered the call of the moon. The moment they shifted for the first time and became true pack members. It was sacred. It was inevitable. It had never failed. Until Elena. 3 full years had passed since her 16th birthday. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of whispers. 3 years of humiliation. And still. No wolf. A group of warriors standing near the front benches snickered loudly. That's her? The wolfless girl? She looks more like a starving human than a wolf. Another voice added cruelly, maybe the moon forgot about her. Laughter rippled across the hall. Elena heard every word. But she didn't react. She stood quietly in the center of the stone floor, her dark hair falling across her shoulders, her eyes fixed straight ahead. Not at the crowd. At the throne. At the far end of the massive chamber sat Alpha King Marcus Valerian, the ruler of all Blood Moon packs. The strongest werewolf alive. His throne, carved from obsidian and ancient bone, towered above the court like a monument to power. Golden firelight reflected in his sharp amber eyes as he watched the girl in the center of the hall. Unlike the others, he was not laughing. He was studying her. Beside the throne stood the High Elder, a tall, thin wolf with silver hair and a ceremonial staff carved with ancient runes. The old wolf slammed the staff against the stone floor. Clack! The entire hall fell silent. Elena Hart. His voice echoed across the chamber. You stand before the Moon Court accused of hiding your true nature. A murmur spread through the gathered wolves. The elder continued. For 3 years, you have failed to awaken your wolf spirit. For 3 years, you have walked among the packs without proving your blood. His eyes narrowed. In the laws of our kingdom, such a thing is impossible. Several nobles nodded grimly. A few whispered the word again. Wolfless. The elder's voice hardened. The court must determine the truth today. He gestured toward the wide stone circle carved into the center of the floor. Ancient runes glowed faintly along its edges. The trial ring. The sacred ground where young wolves revealed their true forms. Every wolf in the kingdom had stepped into that circle once. Every wolf had shifted. Except Elena. The elder raised his staff again. If you cannot awaken your wolf spirit here. He paused. The word hung heavy in the air. You will be declared an outsider and banished from the Blood Moon Kingdom. A few wolves nodded in approval. Others simply watched with cold curiosity. Exile was a death sentence. Outside the borders of the packs were rogue wolves, hunters, and creatures far worse. No wolfless human could survive alone. The elder turned toward the throne. Your Majesty. Marcus Valerian leaned forward slightly, resting one clawed hand against the arm of his throne. His gaze remained fixed on Elena. For a moment, the entire court held its breath. Then the Alpha King spoke. His voice was calm. Deep. Dangerously quiet. Tell me something, girl. Every wolf turned toward Elena. Marcus's golden eyes narrowed slightly. Do you have a wolf? The question echoed across the hall. Elena lifted her head slowly. Her eyes met the Alpha King's. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. I don't know. The silence lasted only half a second. Then the entire hall erupted in laughter. One of the warriors slapped his knee. She doesn't even know. Another shouted, the moon truly forgot her. Even some of the nobles near the throne were smirking. The High Elder sighed heavily. Enough. He struck the staff against the floor again. Elena Hart. Step into the trial ring. The laughter slowly died as Elena walked forward. Her footsteps echoed softly across the stone floor. 1 step. 2. 3. She crossed the glowing runes and stood at the center of the circle. Hundreds of eyes watched her. Some curious. Some mocking. Some already convinced of the outcome. The elder lifted his staff. By the authority of the Moon Court. He raised the staff high above his head. And by the blessing of the moon itself. The staff slammed into the ground. Shift. Silence filled the hall. Elena stood perfectly still. Her chest rose and fell slowly. The seconds ticked by. 1, 2, 5, 10. Nothing happened. A warrior snorted loudly. I told you. Another laughed. She's wolfless. The laughter started again. Louder this time. More confident. Even some of the elders looked bored. The High Elder lowered his staff. It appears the rumors were. Then something changed. The air grew heavy. A strange pressure spread through the hall like an approaching storm. The torches flickered violently. Several wolves stopped laughing. One of the warriors blinked. Wait. Another whispered nervously. Do you feel that? The pressure grew stronger. Every wolf in the hall suddenly felt their inner beast stir. Not in challenge. In fear. At the far end of the chamber, Alpha King Marcus slowly rose from his throne. His golden eyes narrowed sharply. Something ancient had just awakened. And it was standing inside the trial ring. The laughter died instantly. The hall fell silent again. Elena slowly lifted her head. Her hair shifted in the strange wind filling the chamber. And when she opened her eyes, they were no longer human. They glowed with cold, silver light. And for the first time in his reign, the Alpha King felt his wolf take a step backward. Silence swallowed the moon court. Not the kind of silence that came from respect. This was the silence of instinct. Of predators suddenly realizing something far more dangerous had entered the room. Every wolf in the great hall felt it. The pressure. It rolled through the chamber like a slow, invisible wave. The warriors closest to the trial ring took an unconscious step backward. A few younger wolves clutched their chests as their inner wolves stirred violently. One noble whispered in confusion. What is happening? At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Marcus Valerian stood from his throne. That alone made several wolves gasp. The Alpha King never stood during a trial. Not unless something extraordinary was happening. His golden eyes locked onto the girl inside the trial ring. Except, she didn't look like the same girl anymore. Elena Hart slowly lifted her head. Her eyes glowed with an eerie silver light, brighter than the runes carved into the stone circle beneath her feet. They were not the eyes of a normal werewolf. Even the elders could see that. The High Elder gripped his staff tightly. His hands were trembling. That color. Another elder leaned closer, whispering urgently. Silver eyes, that's impossible. The pressure in the room grew stronger. Not aggressive. Not violent. But ancient. Like standing beneath the weight of something far older than the kingdom itself. Several wolves lowered their heads without realizing it. Their instincts were reacting before their minds could catch up. Inside the trial ring, Elena's breathing grew deeper. Slower. Each breath echoed faintly in the silent hall. Her hands trembled. Then suddenly, crack. The sound echoed like breaking stone. A warrior near the front flinched. Did you hear that? Another crack followed. This time louder. The High Elder's eyes widened in horror. Her bones? Elena staggered slightly. Her fingers curled as if invisible forces were pulling at her body. The runes beneath her feet began glowing brighter. Brighter than they ever had before. Stop the ritual, one of the nobles shouted. This isn't normal. But the High Elder didn't move. He couldn't. Something inside him, something ancient in his blood, was telling him the truth. This was no accident. This was destiny. Elena gasped suddenly. Her back arched as another sharp crack echoed through the hall. Gasps spread through the crowd. Her shoulders were shifting. Stretching. Changing shape beneath her skin. A warrior whispered in disbelief. That's not how wolves shift. Normal werewolves transformed quickly. Their wolves burst forward with violent speed. But this transformation was different. Slow. Powerful. Like something awakening after a long sleep. Marcus Valerian's eyes narrowed. His wolf inside him was restless now. Uneasy. For the first time in years, the Alpha King felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. What are you? He muttered under his breath. Inside the trial ring, Elena fell to one knee. Her hands pressed against the stone floor. Her silver eyes burned brighter. A deep growl echoed from her chest. But it wasn't human. And it wasn't a normal wolf either. The sound vibrated through the hall like distant thunder. Several wolves immediately lowered their heads. Not out of respect. Out of instinctive submission. One of the younger warriors panicked. What kind of wolf growls like that? The runes around the trial ring suddenly blazed with silver light. The entire circle ignited. Energy surged upward like a storm of moonlight. Elena screamed. Not in pain, but in release. Her body lifted slightly from the ground as silver light exploded around her. The torches along the walls extinguished instantly. The entire hall was bathed in pale moonlight. Wind roared through the chamber. The banners of the Blood Moon Kingdom snapped violently against the stone walls. Several wolves shielded their eyes. "What is this power?" an elder shouted. No one answered. Because no one knew. Then something massive began forming inside the storm of silver light. At first it was just a shadow. Large. Far larger than any wolf should be. The warriors near the ring backed away in alarm. "That thing is huge." The shadow stretched higher. Broader. Its shape becoming clearer with every passing second. A massive head. Long powerful limbs. A tail that swept through the swirling light like a blade. And then, the silver storm vanished. The creature standing in the center of the trial ring was a wolf. But not like any wolf the Moon Court had ever seen. It stood nearly twice the height of the largest alpha warrior. Its fur shimmered like liquid moonlight. Every strand glowing faintly silver. Its eyes burned like twin stars in the darkness. Ancient. Cold. And impossibly powerful. The entire hall froze. No one moved. No one even breathed. One elder slowly dropped to his knees. His voice trembled. "By the moon." Another whispered the word no wolf had spoken in centuries. Primordial. Legend spoke of the first wolves. The original creatures blessed directly by the moon itself. They were said to command even the alphas. But those stories were considered myths. Fairy tales told to young pups. Until now. The giant silver wolf slowly lifted its head. Its gaze swept across the Moon Court. Every wolf that met those glowing eyes felt the same thing. Not fear. Not exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. The blood of every wolf in the room suddenly understood something their minds could barely accept. The creature standing before them was older than their kingdom. Older than their laws. Older than their throne. At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Marcus Valerian stared in stunned silence. Then something inside him shifted. His wolf. The strongest wolf in the kingdom. The beast that had never bowed to anyone. Took one step back. And lowered its head. No one in the Moon Court moved. Hundreds of warriors, elders, and nobles stood frozen in place, their eyes locked on the enormous silver wolf standing in the trial ring. The creature did not snarl. It did not bare its teeth. It simply stood there. And yet the pressure it released filled the entire hall like an invisible mountain pressing down on every wolf present. The massive wolf slowly turned its head. Silver eyes swept across the chamber. Every wolf that met that gaze felt the same reaction. Their inner wolves recoiled. Not out of fear alone. Out of recognition. Instinct older than memory whispered one undeniable truth. This creature stood above them. A warrior near the front swallowed hard. That can't be real. Another whispered, barely breathing. No wolf is that big. The high elder remained on his knees near the throne, staring at the silver wolf with trembling eyes. "I've read the ancient texts," he whispered hoarsely. "They describe them exactly like this." One of the younger elders turned to him urgently. "Described what?" The old wolf looked back at the creature in the ring. His voice shook. "The first wolves." The word spread through the court like wildfire. Murmurs erupted. "The legends? That's impossible. They died out thousands of years ago." But the evidence was standing right in front of them. The giant wolf shifted its weight slightly. The stone floor beneath its paws cracked with a low grinding sound. Several warriors instinctively stepped farther back. Even the battle-hardened guards along the walls were staring in stunned silence. None of them had ever seen anything like this. At the far end of the chamber, Alpha King Marcus Valerian slowly descended the steps of his throne. Each step echoed loudly in the quiet hall. The court parted automatically to let him through. The Alpha King was tall even among werewolves, his dark armor reflecting the dim moonlight now filling the hall. But as he walked closer to the creature, even Marcus seemed small in comparison. The silver wolf watched him approach. It did not move. It did not growl. But its glowing eyes followed his every step. The air grew heavier with every meter he crossed. Marcus stopped at the edge of the trial ring. Only a few feet separated him from the creature. The two powerful beings stared at one another. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus spoke. His voice was steady, but quieter than usual. "Elena Hart." The giant wolf's ears twitched slightly at the name. A ripple of surprise spread through the watching court. The Alpha King continued. "If you can still hear me." He studied the creature carefully. Then this is no ordinary shift. The silver wolf slowly lowered its head. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Gasps echoed across the chamber. She understands him. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. So the girl is still in there. Behind him, the High Elder struggled to his feet. Your Majesty, he said urgently, this is dangerous. No wolf has ever transformed into something like this. Marcus didn't turn around. His eyes never left the creature. Exactly. The giant wolf suddenly stepped forward. The sound of its paw hitting the stone floor echoed like a hammer strike. The entire court flinched. Warriors instinctively reached for weapons they knew would be useless. The wolf stopped only a few steps from the Alpha King now. They stood face to face. Golden eyes against silver. The pressure in the hall doubled instantly. Several wolves fell to one knee without meaning to. Their instincts were screaming at them. Submit. Marcus felt it too. A powerful wave of dominance rolling over him. Stronger than anything he had ever felt before. His wolf inside him stirred violently. But instead of challenging, it hesitated. The Alpha King's brow furrowed slightly. Interesting. He slowly lifted his chin. You're testing me. The giant wolf watched him silently. Then it did something no one expected. It released a low, deep growl. The sound rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. But the growl wasn't threatening. It was ancient. Commanding. And the reaction was immediate. Nearly half the wolves in the room dropped to their knees. Some bowed their heads instinctively. Others simply collapsed under the overwhelming pressure. What is this power? One noble cried. The High Elder stared at the silver wolf in awe. It's not aggression, he whispered. It's authority. Marcus Valerian stood perfectly still. The pressure continued pushing against him. Testing him. His wolf trembled. But he did not kneel. Instead, the Alpha King slowly took one more step forward. Now he stood directly in front of the massive wolf. Close enough to touch it. The entire court held its breath. For a moment it looked like Marcus might challenge the creature. Might prove the Alpha King still ruled this kingdom. Instead, Marcus studied the wolf's glowing silver eyes. And something in his expression changed. Recognition. Understanding. He exhaled slowly. So that's what you are. Behind him, the High Elder whispered nervously. Your Majesty? Marcus spoke without looking back. This isn't just a wolf. The giant creature watched him quietly. Marcus lowered his gaze slightly. Not fully. But enough. His voice carried through the silent hall. This is something far older. The Alpha King took one final step forward. Then he did something no one in the kingdom had ever seen before. Marcus Valerian slowly bent his knee. And knelt. The moment Alpha King Marcus Valerian lowered his knee to the stone floor, the entire moon court froze. For a heartbeat, no one even breathed. The sound of his armor touching the stone echoed across the vast chamber like thunder. The most powerful werewolf in the kingdom. The Alpha King who had ruled every pack, defeated every challenger, and commanded the loyalty of thousands of wolves, was kneeling before the creature standing in the trial ring. Gasps erupted throughout the hall. What is he doing? The Alpha King bowed. That's impossible. Several warriors looked completely stunned. A few even took a step forward, as if thinking they should stop what they were seeing. But none of them moved any closer. Because the silver wolf was still there. Still watching. Still radiating that immense, ancient pressure. Marcus remained on one knee. His head lowered slightly, not in humiliation, but in recognition. A king acknowledging something greater than his throne. Behind him, the High Elder stared in disbelief. Your Majesty, he whispered. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was calm. Respectful. And loud enough for the entire court to hear. Forgive our ignorance. Moonborn. The word struck the court like lightning. Moonborn. An ancient title buried deep within forgotten legends. Several elders immediately dropped to their knees. Others stared in shock as realization slowly spread across their faces. The Moonborn. That's just a myth. No, the old scriptures mentioned it. The High Elder's hands trembled as he remembered the ancient texts. Stories written thousands of years before the Blood Moon Kingdom existed. Stories of the first wolves created by the moon itself. Beings born with authority over all others. Beings whose bloodline eventually weakened into the werewolves of today. The silver wolf standing in the trial ring slowly lifted its massive head. Its glowing silver eyes swept across the kneeling wolves. Every wolf that met that gaze felt the same overwhelming instinct. Bow. Not because they were afraid, but because their blood recognized its origin. One by one, more wolves began to kneel. Warriors, nobles, even elders who had mocked Elena only minutes ago now lowered themselves to the floor. The entire court was slowly bending to the creature's presence. Within moments, nearly the entire hall had dropped to one knee. Only a few stunned spectators still stood frozen in disbelief. The giant silver wolf took a slow step forward. Stone cracked beneath its enormous paw. The creature stopped directly in front of the kneeling Alpha King. Marcus remained perfectly still. His head bowed slightly. The silver wolf lowered its massive head until its glowing eyes were level with his. For several seconds they simply stared at one another. Then something unexpected happened. The giant wolf sniffed the air. Marcus blinked slightly, surprised. The enormous creature studied him carefully. Then the wolf gave a small, approving rumble deep in its chest. Almost like a satisfied growl. Behind Marcus, the High Elder whispered in awe. "It's judging him." The silver wolf stepped past the kneeling Alpha King. Gasps followed its movement. Each step echoed heavily through the silent hall. The creature walked slowly along the center of the court, inspecting the gathered wolves. Those who had mocked Elena earlier now stared at the floor, unable to lift their eyes. The pressure filling the room had changed. It was no longer overwhelming. But it was still undeniable. Absolute authority. The wolf stopped in the middle of the hall. Then it did something no one expected. Its body began to glow. Silver light flowed across its fur like liquid moonlight. The giant form slowly began shrinking. Bones shifted again. Muscles folded inward. The enormous wolf form dissolved within the silver glow. Gasps echoed through the court. Is she changing again? The light faded gradually. And where the massive wolf had stood, a young woman now stood quietly. Elena Hart. But she was no longer the same girl who had entered the trial ring. Her silver eyes glowed softly. Her posture was calm. Confident. Almost regal. The air itself seemed to move differently around her. For a moment the entire court stared in stunned silence. Then the High Elder slowly lowered himself fully to the ground, pressing his forehead against the stone. "My queen." More wolves followed immediately. Warriors bowed deeper. Nobles lowered their heads. The Alpha King remained on one knee, still waiting. Elena looked down at him. For a long moment she said nothing. Marcus finally lifted his head slightly. His voice was quiet. Respectful. "Forgive us for calling you wolfless." The court remained completely silent. Elena's silver eyes studied the Alpha King. Then she spoke. And her voice carried through the hall with calm authority. "You were not wrong." Marcus frowned slightly. "Not wrong?" Elena's gaze shifted across the kneeling court. Then she said something that made every wolf's heart skip. "I was never a wolf." A ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. Several elders exchanged uncertain glances. The High Elder slowly looked up. "If you are not a wolf." His voice trembled. "Then what are you?" Elena lifted her eyes toward the open skylight above the court. The full moon shone brightly in the night sky. Silver light reflected in her glowing eyes. Then she answered. "I am the wolf your legends forgot." The words hung in the air like a spell. "I am the wolf your legends forgot." For a moment, the moon court remained frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Hundreds of wolves knelt across the vast chamber, their heads bowed toward the young woman standing in the center of the trial ring. Just minutes ago, she had been the girl they mocked. The wolfless. Now the very air around her carried a quiet authority that none of them could deny. Above the court, the full moon shone through the open skylight, casting pale silver light across the stone floor. The same silver light reflected in Elena Hart's eyes. At the front of the hall, Alpha King Marcus Valerian slowly rose from his kneeling position. But even as he stood, his posture remained respectful. Not submissive. Not fearful. But recognizing a truth older than his crown. The High Elder was still kneeling, his forehead pressed against the stone. His voice trembled. The legend said, the moonborn would return when the blood of wolves forgot its origin. Another elder whispered nervously. But we thought those were just stories. Marcus finally spoke. They weren't. His gaze remained fixed on Elena. The court waited. Elena looked around the chamber slowly. Warriors who had laughed at her now refused to meet her eyes. Nobles trembled quietly. Even the elders who governed the kingdom now looked uncertain. It was strange. Only an hour ago she had stood here alone. Powerless. Now the entire court was waiting for her next words. Elena took a slow breath. Fragments of memory were stirring in her mind. Not her own memories. Older ones. Ancient ones. Images flashed through her thoughts. Endless forests beneath a brighter moon. Great wolves running across untouched land. Creatures of silver and shadow who answered to no king. The first wolves. The beings the moon had created before the world built kingdoms and laws. Over centuries their bloodline had faded. Weakened. Eventually becoming the werewolves that now ruled the packs. But the original blood had never truly vanished. It had only slept. Until now. Elena slowly stepped forward. Her bare feet echoed softly against the stone. Every wolf in the court instinctively lowered their heads further as she passed. She stopped beside Marcus. The Alpha King met her silver gaze calmly. "You didn't know what you were," he said quietly. Elena shook her head. "No." Her voice carried through the silent hall. "I only knew something inside me was waiting." Marcus nodded slightly. "That explains why no wolf appeared." The High Elder slowly lifted his head. His eyes were wide with realization. "You don't have a wolf spirit." Elena looked down at him. "No." Her voice was steady. "I am the wolf." A ripple of shock spread through the court again. One of the warriors whispered in disbelief. "The wolf itself." Marcus turned slightly toward the gathered court. His voice became stronger now. Commanding. "Look at her." No one dared refuse. Hundreds of wolves slowly lifted their heads. Marcus continued. "For generations we believed the moon gave us wolves to guide us." He gestured toward Elena. "But the truth is far older." His golden eyes swept across the chamber. "The wolves came first." The High Elder bowed deeply again. "The moonborn." Elena turned toward the open skylight. The moon hung high above the court. Silver light bathed the chamber. For a moment she simply watched it. Then she spoke quietly. "The moon did not create kings." Her silver eyes moved across the court. "It created guardians." Several warriors exchanged uncertain looks. Marcus folded his arms. "And what does that mean for us?" Elena stepped toward the center of the hall again. She looked at the wolves kneeling around her. Their fear was obvious. But so was something else. Hope. Because deep down, every wolf knew the packs had changed. Politics. Power struggles. Corruption among certain noble houses. The kingdom had lost something important. Elena finally answered. "It means the packs have forgotten why they exist." The court listened carefully. The moon did not give wolves power to rule each other. She gestured toward the kneeling warriors. "It gave us power to protect." Silence followed her words. The High Elder whispered softly. "The guardian of the packs." Marcus studied her carefully. Then he asked the question everyone in the hall was thinking. "What happens now?" Elena turned toward him. For a moment her expression softened. "Now." She glanced around the court again. Then a faint smile appeared on her face. "Now we remind the world what wolves are meant to be." A quiet murmur spread across the hall. The Alpha King considered her words. Then he did something surprising. Marcus stepped forward. And raised his voice for the entire court to hear. "From this day forward." The chamber fell silent again. Marcus Valerian bowed his head slightly. "The moonborn walks among us." The High Elder struck his staff against the stone. The sound echoed across the hall. Every wolf lowered themselves completely to the floor. "Honor to the first wolf," the Elder declared. The words rolled through the chamber like thunder. Hundreds of voices repeated the phrase. "Honor to the first wolf." Elena stood beneath the moonlight. Calm. Silent. The girl they once mocked as wolfless had become something far greater. Not a queen. Not a ruler. Something older. Something the world had forgotten. The first wolf born in 1,000 years. And the age of ordinary wolves had just ended.